Hello again, everyone. My name is Kevin Ayers, and welcome to my video series regarding my unemployment experience. So far in this series, we have discussed a higher level overview of my unemployment. We've considered the basic stages of loss and the concept of ambiguous loss. We've discussed how meaning can be derived from your employment. We've discussed creating your story about unemployment that you tell others and share with them. We discussed the 3 suggestions I have for taking action when you feel overwhelmed. We discussed the travel path and the non-negotiables. And last week we spoke about successful rejection. If you haven't seen the other videos yet, that's okay. You don't have to watch them in order. Stay where you are, sit down, get comfortable, and check this one out. If you like it, then check out the other videos and give me some feedback. I want to give those who have given me feedback kudos, and I appreciate that. This week's quote comes from the author Madeleine L'Engle. Quote, "When we were children, we used to think that when we were grown up, we would no longer be vulnerable. But to grow up is to accept vulnerability. To be alive is to be vulnerable." End quote. Much of the unemployment experience relates to personal growth. And it is taking as much as you can from the unknown bucket and moving it into the known bucket. Whenever you discover something you did not know about yourself, key in on that, write it down, come back to it again and again, keep working on it until it's no longer a blind spot. Vulnerability reveals a lot that is in the unknown bucket. It's something that follows you around, especially when you have something like unemployment hanging over your head all day, every day. It's there when you lay down, and it's there when you wake up. It makes itself known throughout the day, oftentimes when you least expect it. It makes you want to crawl back into the cave and put your chains back on your ankles and your wrists so you can watch the dance of the world go on without you. You can feel like a fraud at the same time when you know you are more qualified than the person asking you the interview questions. You will one day realize that there is more of you in the unknown bucket than in the known bucket. Yet, if you persevere, you may one day see the scales tip in the other direction. When that scale starts to move, you may dislike your old self because you will finally see that you are not who you thought you were. Take it from me, you're a mystery to yourself as I am a mystery to myself. That old self that you thought you were will begin to die, and your newer self will emerge. This is going to happen, albeit slowly. Think of it like losing weight. When you're on a diet, you don't weigh yourself every hour of every day. The fluctuations at that frequency are up and down constantly. However, checking your weight periodically, maybe weekly, monthly, it'll show a trend in one direction or the other, which is more meaningful. If you use the typical methods that people use of ignoring vulnerability, such as playing games, getting lost in something outside of yourself like sports, politics, busyness, and the like, then you may not have to wrestle with vulnerability at all, but you will lose the opportunity for growth and knowledge of yourself that can help you change the way you interact with the world. You may see others walking the same path that you're walking while looking like they have it all together, and as if they're weathering the storm so well and as if they barely notice the storm at all. I believe that stifling the emotions associated with vulnerability is so unhelpful. I'm not saying that you need to advertise your position and overshare to the world. The truth of our current situation may not be flattering and it can be embarrassing at times. It will probably be slowly changing if you are addressing it correctly. You may have to summon some extra inner strength here and there to allow for some insecurity to be put on display. So be prepared for some to treat you differently after they encounter some of your vulnerability. I want you to keep 3 things in mind here. You can't control what others think. You can influence what others think, sometimes more, sometimes less. You can be more in control of what you think. So, how do we deal with that deep gut, visceral thing that is vulnerability in a positive fashion? There is some suffering to it, and I believe that the following point is critical. We are terrible at suffering alone. And when we suffer, we're made to suffer together. Suffering in isolation just compounds your problems. Sharing your story with someone going through the same thing is critical. Sharing well creates even more vulnerability, so it is something that you're either going to have to reject or accept. There is a psychic energy that is used up when you're dealing with vulnerability. There's an exposure to being potentially wounded that others can see, that there's something inside you that is vulnerable. Being vulnerable amplifies an inner struggle to the point that it does show sometimes on the outside, and you very well may become a target not only from others but sometimes yourself. You will feel like everyone else is being blessed while you are going through all of this alone, but you're not. Uh, you will be walking in new territory where you are unsure of your next steps or where you are headed, but you're going to get through it. The more you may find answers to the questions that make you feel vulnerable, the better crafted the story can be that you tell yourself and others, and the less vulnerable you will feel over time. The more you struggle with the feelings of vulnerability, the more your principles and values are sculpted. What doesn't belong gets chipped away, and instead of getting weaker, that whatever's left becomes stronger. All of this whittling away of that which doesn't belong as you open up about your emotions and feelings, like I said earlier, means that you also open yourself up to become a big target for others. So while you may feel strong here, there is the feeling of being weak elsewhere as you work through it. The false self with whom you have been showing the world at large will transform toward a more realistic picture of yourself. Your perfectly curated life will change into something that more closely resembles who you really are, maybe even with some battle scars for character. All along the way, you will be tempted to play the comparison game. The goal here is to work on yourself right where you are. You are not the other person, and they are not where you are right now. I get that we like to play the comparison game, but the goal here is to become a better self, more knowledgeable about yourself, and able to act upon what you've learned through the experience. Something that is foreign to many others and overlooked by some of the people that are in the same boat as you. Learning to be vulnerable, as is the case with other lessons learned while being unemployed, does not mean that you get to fast forward through the hard parts. Honestly, as you work through the hard parts, life seems like it slows down. You get to walk gradually through the present. I like to think that there are two signposts along this path of vulnerability. The first is when you're becoming concerned for all those who are still stuck in the ditch that you're crawling out of. You will have made great strides along your journey when you feel that way. And second, when you start to feel, when you're becoming happy for other successes, in spite of all the mess that you're in, I think you are making even greater strides. So how aware of you are of your vulnerabilities throughout your journey? When do you feel the most vulnerable? Does that feeling of vulnerability hit you more when it's family, friends, past employees, strangers? Let me know. When this gets posted, feel free to speak your minds in the comments section down below. Send me a text message or send me an email. Give me a thumbs up if you liked what you've seen and heard. Subscribe and ring the bell so you can be notified of new videos when they get posted. And until next time, take care, everybody, and I hope to see you again.